And finally today, we're going to take a closer look at the House Ethics Committee in the wake of charges against Charlie Rangel and Maxine Waters. It turns out there's another investigative body in Congress that's a lot more independent, but no one pays attention to it. Investigative correspondent Sharyl Attkisson will join me, but first, let's take a look at her report.
The ethics cases against Charles Rangel and Maxine Waters highlight an odd paradox that many other members of Congress do similar things but are not facing charges. That's Congressman Sam Graves introducing a witness at a hearing promoting renewable energy interests.
Brooks, thanks for being here.
Congressman Graves failed to mention that Brooks Hurst was an old friend. The congressman also left out that his own wife and Hurst invested money in the same Missouri fuel plants. Congressman Waters argues that is the same thing she's accused of, helping a good friend in his company where her spouse owns stock. Yet Waters is the only one facing an ethics trial. Then there is Congressman John Carter, criticizing Rangel for, among other things, failing to disclose income.
These are all violations of the rules of the House.
But listen to Carter just a few weeks later.
I made an error on my House financial disclosure forms.
That's right. He got caught just like Rangel, failing to report income, nearly $300,000 in profits from selling Exxon stock. But Carter isn't facing an ethics trial. When it comes to ethics, Congress largely polices itself. It set up two separate ethics bodies, but it turns out they almost always disagree. The House Ethics Committee is members of Congress judging their own. Too often, critics said, they made excuses for colleagues rather than holding them accountable. Watchdog Melanie Sloan heads up the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington.
The fact is, the Ethics Committee is renowned for not doing its job. It is the most toothless committee in Congress. It never goes after anybody and really exists just to give members a pass. Congress can say it cares about ethics by having an ethics committee, but the ethics committee never finds anybody did anything wrong.
To fix it in 2007, Congress created an independent Office of Congressional Ethics, an even split of Democrats led by former Congressman David Skaggs of Colorado and Republicans led by former CIA Director Porter Goss. The independent office investigates cases and refers them to the House Ethics Committee, which decides whether to bring charges. But just look at how it's turned out. In 11 out of 12 cases referred by the independent office, the House Ethics Committee decided not to charge any members. Are they thumbing their nose at the independent outside office?
Absolutely. The Inside Ethics Committee has made it abundantly clear that it hates the Office of Congressional Ethics, suggesting that the office is out of touch and overly aggressive and finding problems where none exist.
The independent office found evidence that Congresswoman Laura Richardson got preferential treatment on her foreclosed home. They pursued Congressman Pete Stark, who claimed a Maryland home as his principal residence, though he was registered to vote and drive in California. They went after 5 members, including Rangel, who took a Caribbean jaunt to St. Martin paid for by big corporations, which isn't allowed. They found evidence suggesting 2 congressmen gave millions of your tax dollars to companies to get campaign contributions. And they referred that conflict of interest case against Congressman Graves.
Our next witness is Brooks Hurst.
The members of Congress denied wrongdoing, and each time the House Ethics Committee, the congressional insiders, sided with them. Finally, there's Nathan Deal. The outside office found evidence he failed to disclose income and misused public resources, which he denied. Minutes before the House committee was to release its findings, Deal resigned to run for governor of Georgia. And the case was dropped. The independent office is looking at up to 42 unnamed members of Congress. If history is an indicator, the members have little to fear. If anyone should worry, it might be the independent office, which serves at the pleasure of Congress, those they investigate. Both Democrats and Republicans have said they want to dilute or eliminate the independent ethics office, but none would talk with us.
Watchdogs are just horrified by this because the one good thing that's happened in congressional ethics in the past few years has been the creation of the Office of Congressional Ethics. Members of Congress are finally being held accountable for their misconduct, and that's a terrific thing, and I think it's something all Americans want to see. Sadly, all Americans except for other members of Congress.
You think this time next year that office is all but gone?
I think this time next year that office is all but gone. If it exists, it's just a shadow of it for its former self.
Well, boy, that's a case of Congress protecting its own in this period of allegedly intense partisanship. Why do we hear so little about the Office of Congressional Ethics?
I think the office stays relatively quiet. I asked both the House Ethics Committee and the independent office for interviews, and they really won't talk to the media. They don't really want to make their cases in public, so they kind of like fly below the radar. And in working on this story, I consulted with a lot of longtime Washington insiders, none of whom knew of this system where there's the outside independent office referring these cases to the inside office, which is pretty much just dismissing most of them.
Kind of like the House impeachment and the Senate trial, but is it likely that by the end of the next congressional term this independent office is not going to exist anymore?
Pretty much everyone that I spoke to thinks that if it exists at all, it's not going to have any teeth. What my understanding is, what will happen after the November elections is during that lame duck period in December, when they reauthorize this committee under the rules, there's some technical procedures that Congress, because both sides want to do this, will dilute or find a way to eliminate the independent office.
And is there any solution to this, or Congress essentially has veto over these investigations? And
public pressure is so roundabout. There may be members of the public and watchdogs who don't want to see that independent office go away, but the fact is the members of Congress, if they want it to go away, and as I said, up to 42 of them are under current investigation, why would they want to keep it going? It's up to them whether to reauthorize the independent committee or not. Why would they?
I didn't realize that. 42, 10%.
Yeah.
Everyone, that's pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Sharyl.